Hello and welcome back to another KCC video. I'm Rob and today we'll be jumping into malicious compliance. Before we start, please hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you know when the next video goes live. Our first story today comes to us from Janny27. Can't wait to get rid of me? No problem. Oh, now you want me back? Nah. Let's jump right in. The setting, late 2012, when I was working as a graphic designer and social media marketing exec at a nonprofit. When I started this job the year before, I had a wonderful supervisor who trusted me a lot, while also being wisely assertive in times when I could do a lot better. He had a lot of great ideas. We had a good working relationship and I learned a lot from him. During staff evaluations every 6 months, he'd be honest with me without being nasty, gave constructive criticism on my weaker areas while encouraging me in areas I excelled in. About 8 months later, my supervisor decided to leave his job and move back to his home country. Because of this, his position of supervising the media peeps was given to another staff in the company. Let's name him G. G is skilled at coding, but not so much on the visual communication side of things. Yet, he would critique my and the other media guys' work in ways that sometimes didn't make sense. One example would be him watching over me super closely, like his head was next to mine as I worked on the iMac, and his breath would stink of garlic from lunch. Then he'd tell me that I should put all the text in center alignment because anything but isn't aesthetically pleasing. Cue eye roll. He'd burp aloud often. It's worse when he had a cold and would make it very clear that he's congested and phlegmy. I didn't have as good of a working relationship with him compared to my previous supervisor, but I did what I could. There was a lot of unspoken tension between us, and I noticed between him and a few other staff in the company as well. A few months into having G as my supervisor, it was time for the next staff evaluation. It was awful. He criticized me for not listening to his creative suggestions, blamed and scolded me for things I did months ago that I couldn't even remember, etc. You said something disrespectful to our boss 3 months ago. That is not good character. Like, dude, if I was out of line, at least tell me there and then, rather than wait for 3 months at an evaluation to dump all the crap on me. I was in tears from just how he was handling it. Then, he gave me an ultimatum. It's either I get demoted to an intern position with a pay cut and be under observation for the next 6 months, or I could choose to quit. And oh, I was told sternly not to talk to anyone else about this because it was private and confidential. So basically I walked out of the office with a red and swollen face, and the other media team guy, who's a good friend by the way, was super concerned. I could only say I was threatened not to say anything, but I just might when this is over. That evening, I spoke to my mom, an HR manager in a multinational company, about this incident with G, and she said something that shocked me. Apparently, it's common for supervisors and managers to keep quiet about a staff's perceived wrongdoings for months until it's time for staff evaluations, just so the staff could be denied of a raise and such. My mom advised me to resign and move on to something less toxic. So I wrote my letter and handed it in the very next day. My notice was 3 months to wrap up a project in which I carried significant weight, but he insisted that the day I handed in my letter was my last with them. I was shocked, and he added that I was to tell no one about it. So basically, it was my last day at work and I had to pretend I was coming to work the next day, but actually, no, I would be gone for good. Let's just say the next day, the other staff were shocked that I was gone. Till this day, I have no idea what was said about me and the reason for why I left abruptly. My media teammate reached out to me and was like, please tell me the truth of what happened. I trusted him and told him everything. Fast forward to almost a year later, another staff left the company because of G, and another manager begged me to come back because for the past year, no one was able to fill my shoes. What do you think I said? Of course I turned it down. The G guy was hell-bent on ousting me, so why should I return? They were only able to find someone to take over my position perhaps 1.5 to 2 years after I was forced to leave. Ha! I did work for a company once where they would escort you off the premises if you brought in your 2 weeks notice, but they would also cut you a check for all of the pay you would have made during that time. It was just too risky to keep people on who already had one foot out the door. The manager in this story trying to tell you to keep quiet just sounds like they were completely insecure and trying to cover their own butts. Insecure managers absolutely suck. Our second story today comes from I'm a lead rectum. Technically, Mr. Principal, I'm following the rules. Let's jump right in. This was a few years ago. I was a senior in high school. At the time, an 18-year-old male. I was a major smartass and was very nihilistic due to my past. For a little context, I have an IEP at my school that allowed me to use my phone for music therapy since I was diagnosed with severe depression, anxiety, Asperger's syndrome, and PTSD. By law, teachers have to follow without questions or overruling, and if anyone tried to stop me, they could get fined, fired, etc. IEPs are no joke for a reason. My senior year, the old principal resigned, and we got Sergeant Hardass in his place. Starting out, he changed absolutely everything and was very strict with it. I'm assuming to assert dominance to show he's no pushover. One of the biggest changes was a zero tolerance to digital devices in or out of the classroom. That included everything from phones, Bluetooth earbuds and headphones, smartwatches, etc. Teachers loved it until they figured out that it also applied to them, so they said screw it and didn't enforce it. Though trying to listen to music in between classrooms was like trying to smuggle bombs onto a post-9/11 airplane. I had a lot of the same teachers from year before, so they knew my story and I was a good student, but I had a sense of humor and hard-headed, and they knew I could find a loophole in anything to get my way or prove my point. It all starts with a very shitty Monday morning. I was on edge, as I always was at that school, and decided to listen to some hard-hitting brutal death metal. It's therapeutic. I got stopped by Sergeant Hardass, and this is what took place. Are you new here? No? Why? Okay, give me your phone now. I can't. I have in my paper. I don't care. According to the handbook, no MP3 players, phones, any digital devices at all. I'm a man of my word, so hand it over. At this point, I can feel my anxiety rising. My hands were shaking, and my eyes were getting warm and watery, and I couldn't breathe. I needed to get out of there quickly before I bursted. The office was far from where my emergency anxiety meds, and I knew I wasn't going to make it, so I tried walking to the bathroom till the principal yelled, "Hey," and forcibly grabbed my shoulder like a Karen. So, as an irrational reaction, I turned and right hooked him. He went down to the ground and everyone was laughing and going crazy about it, so I just booked it and ran. Thankfully, my favorite teacher, Mr. Place, managed to catch me and embrace me to calm me down. I ended up passing out in his arms due to hyperventilating. After regaining consciousness in the nurse's office, there was a few cops, Mr. Place, my mom, and the principal with an ice pack on his chin and a bloody towel over his nose. I was questioned on exactly what happened, and after hearing my side, Mr. Place's side, and the camera footage, everyone sided with me, and my mom went ballistic because she busted her butt to get me comfortable in school, and she had a few altercations with teachers harassing me. Unsurprisingly, I got a week suspension, but I wasn't punished at home. I decided to follow his rules, but with my own little twist. I studied the student handbook front to cover and went for a quick gander in the basement of my house to find my dad's things from the 80s and 90s. Dad and I shared a lot of interests, and he got me into all types of heavy metal and punk from a young age, so he passed this stuff down to me. After digging around, I was able to find his Walkman, cassette player, and a bunch of cassette tapes. I took my favorites of all time, Kill 'Em All by Metallica, Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera, Korn's first album, 40 Ounces to Freedom, and self-titled album by Sublime, and lastly, Tomb of the Mutilated by Cannibal Corpse. It was a hard choice, but I didn't want them to crack in my pocket. The first day I was back to school, I was talk of the school because I laid out the principal. I'm embarrassed and felt bad about it, but it was in the past. I saw Sergeant Hardass by my first class, Mr. Place's class, so I stepped to the side and popped in a cassette tape. Walking back, Sergeant Hardass smirked and told me to step over to have a talk. Looks like a week didn't give you enough time to think. Come with me. I'm sorry, I'm not breaking any rules. Boy, don't make me out to be stupid. You obviously have your phone and listening to music. Last time I checked, my policy is still in effect. Right, so technically I'm following your policy of no digital devices? Fine then. You want to play smart? Prove it then. I proceeded to pull out the Walkman and some of the cassettes. He looked very confused. You see, sir, you said no digital device. What I have here is a Walkman with the original wired headphones. Since cassettes are analog and you never said anything about no analog devices, I'm within my full right to jam out on this in and out of the classroom. Sergeant Hardass gets red in his face and starts stumbling over his words to rebuttal. I mean, you say you're a man of your word, so how cowardly would you look if you let a teenager get to you and update the handbook? I see no harm with this, it abides with your rules. Sergeant Hardass grunts, then walk to the neighboring class as I exhale in relief, and I start to feel my anxiety go down. I walk in and nod to Mr. Place. He closes the door and makes sure that Sergeant Hardass isn't nearby and just burst out laughing. I'd say I stood my ground on that one. I was watching the Curiosity Inc. YouTube channel yesterday where they were clearing out a hoarder house and he came across a Walkman in the pile of junk. It brought back memories for me of being a child, listening to my parents' solid gold collection from the Shell gas station. I'll pop a link to the cleaning of the hoarder house down below. Please go check out Curiosity Inc. and make sure in the comments you tell them that Karma Comment Chameleon sent you. Back to the principal though, he should have known what an IEP was, Individualized Education Program, and he should have known that he had to deal with it no matter what. It just sounds like his head was so far up his own butt that he didn't really care what was going on around him. I'd like to thank both OPs for posting their stories in the Malicious Compliance subreddit. They are linked down below, please go check them out. Check out one of these other videos, and if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories.